Hey, buddy.
Hey, what up? We're both sitting like this. It's kind of chilly this morning.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of cold in here too.
Yeah.
Well, we're constantly turning on the heat and then turning on the AC.
I bet.
We're in Burger House now. We're in a new restaurant.
Oh, yeah.
So, kind of like the idea of like mixing it up, like we talked about last week, doing other places. We'll still do Lenny's, but
Yeah.
it's kind of fun to find new environments and think about how like where we should put the cameras and all that. We're in a private room right now, so it's like not the most like interesting to look at. I feel like, we just got like a brick wall behind us, but it works.
It's
fine.
a cool brick wall.
It's super awesome.
It is.
Real brick, I think.
Real brick.
Yeah, not that foam stuff.
Yeah. Real cultured brick.
Yeah. How are you?
Good, man. It's been kind of a whirlwind with life stuff that I won't really get into, but it's almost summer, which is nice because my wife and kids are like super pumped, ready to be out of school. So like everybody's in the summer.
When's the last day of school?
It's Thursday for the kids and Friday for the teachers.
Okay.
So yeah, they're like,
Yeah, that's exciting.
counting down summer of Costanza.
Summer of George.
Yeah.
Supposed to be the summer of George.
So they're all super pumped. The one thing I don't love about it is I just get mildly less work done because they're all home and bugging me. So I'm trying a thing this summer. I told both my kids, like, I know it's hard when I'm home and I'm working and you can't really, but like you have to view me as at the office. Like that's hard, but I'll give you each like 2 weekly coupons, one to play a board game with me and then one to go outside and do something like go on a run or jump on the trampoline or whatever.
Like during the workday?
During the workday, yeah. So once a week for both of them, they can interrupt the workday to do something. As long as I don't have a meeting or something, I can't say no. So I'm hoping that like offsets the need to like interrupt of like, hey dad, I can't get the mower started or whatever. It's like, yes, I can help you with that, but I'm just so not productive.
Yeah.
I'm doing that all day, every day. So I don't know. Hopefully that works and they still get, chunks of
Was
their
it not
dad.
like that last summer? Like, is it not like that? You kind of said like you're nervous about it this summer.
Oh, no, it's just like every summer.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've gone through before and it's been somewhat challenging.
Yeah. And like with the COVID lockdown, that was, it wasn't super bad because I didn't have a ton of work to do, but also it was like, okay, everybody's here all the time.
Yeah. It's more annoying than anything.
I need some space.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Are you guys going on any like summer trips or anything?
Yeah, we're doing a couple. We are going to Minnesota. Eleanor, my daughter, had a friend that moved to South Carolina. So we're going to go to South Carolina, maybe see some history, some Civil War battlefields.
Nice.
You wanna go?
Right up your alley.
I'm actually like, I really want to go to Fort Sumter. Like, how do I get everybody to go and be excited about it? But this is where the first shots of the Civil War were fired.
Where is that?
It's in Charleston,
Okay.
like on the ocean.
Okay.
So yeah, it's where the first shots of the Civil War were fired.
I know. It's been a while since I was in like fourth grade history.
So pumped about that. Oh, I got some big business news. So a buddy of mine is a builder out in Colorado. I designed a few houses for him out there. He just finished one and he's like, hey, you should come out and check it out. And I'm like, I don't need less of an excuse to fly to Colorado.
Yeah, seriously.
So I'm like, yeah, let's make it a work trip. And there's a potential lead out there that might, another builder that might want to use me for some houses. So I'm like, yeah, even more reason to go out there, show some face.
So will that just be like you, like or a family trip? Or?
No, not a family trip. Yeah, just a little too much with a fam to get everybody out there. Eleanor, my daughter, is taking summer school and all that. So, yeah.
How long will you be out there for?
Super
3
quick,
days.
like 2 or 3 days. Yeah.
Still fun.
Yeah.
Really good.
I'm excited.
Cool.
So hopefully that all works out.
Yeah. Awesome.
This week, this actually came up during our talk last week. And I think it'd be fun to dive into. You
Absolutely,
as well.
Yeah. I've done a lot of interviews. I don't know about you. It'll be interesting to hear your perspective on it. But like, I've gone through this process a lot. I guess we didn't even preface what we're talking about.
Yeah. So from the other side of the table, like we've been in interviews, but we've also interviewed a lot of people. And we've mentioned before in the podcast, when you interview someone, it's a lot easier to see what is a good and bad answer. So we thought we'd share some of our common interview questions and then what a good answer is, maybe what a bad answer looks like, what we're not looking for in those questions. I've written down some. I think you have a list over there too. So, yeah, you got one. You want to dive in?
Yeah, I guess like starting, from a higher level or just like a 30,000 foot view. I haven't really interviewed a lot. Like I've been the one that's been leading the interviews, because once I graduated college, we kind of just jumped into
you haven't applied for many jobs.
Right. Yeah. So this has been I've done a ton of interviews and I feel like I've grown a lot just in terms of like understanding just more from just more what I'm looking for, maybe like somewhat from a psychological standpoint of like just cues to look for, things like that. It's always a risk, when you're interviewing and trying to hire someone. Like it's always you at the end of the day, you just kind of hope you're making the right choice. You never really know, but like after going through it a lot, I kind of know like what I'm looking for. And even in October, when we hired a manager, there are going to be times where you interview someone and you think this person's awesome. Like they interview great and they've got a ton of experience and, that's like their best day is the interview. Yeah. And you just get duped, so it happens, whether it's like you're getting duped or you don't feel like, maybe they're just a good interviewer and not a good performer, or like you're hiring someone for a job that they're not going to be a good fit for. Like it's just not the right seat of the bus, there are different factors for it. But all that to say, I feel like, I've gotten a lot better at asking just good questions and trying to understand like, knowing what I'm looking for based on what the position is and, just hoping that they are going to be like a good solid fit. So the biggest one for us is, and I talk about a lot, is managers, so like I've interviewed cooks and dishwashers. I'll still do that every once in a while. If I'm available and Zach's in here doing, a dishwasher interview and I don't have anything really going on, I'll sit in on it, and ask some questions or whatever. But, the managers, whoever's on your leadership team, that's the most critical, for making a really good hire and being very intentional about what you're asking them and that time you're spending with them in the interview, so that just because they're the ones leading, Yeah. So that's really, that's really important.
So what do you think is the most important question to start with?
With managers, it's trying to ensure that they understand that they're getting in, they know what they're getting into. Like with, because a lot of times, like the example in October, this girl was very, had a ton of experience and was very qualified in a lot of ways, but like maybe not for a restaurant manager position. So like, you're not trying to necessarily find the most qualified candidate, like the most experienced person. You're trying to find the best person for that role, and that person might have less experience and not be as like talented in certain ways or insightful. Yeah. But like trying to get them to understand if they are going to be like if they're going to be comfortable with the position and the monotony of that position on an everyday basis, because management can be like if you're not self-motivated, it can be like, I just stand around and I run food. I'm a food runner. You have to be motivated to make the restaurant really awesome,
Yeah.
So I really want to, and it's hard to ask this in a question, but I really want to know like what an ideal shift in a restaurant looks like for them, and because I understand everything that a manager needs to be doing. So like what I really want to avoid is them posting up in the office for like 3 hours a day, because I know that that's not necessary. So like first off, I just like walk me through a typical day for you in a restaurant.
Yeah. So what are some red flags in that?
I think the biggest thing is like, well, there's as we know, there's a lot of office work, and like I like to make sure like no, like I'm so focused on numbers, like that's great to be focused on numbers, but if you're focused on if you're too focused on data and numbers, that to me that's just saying like you're going to find me in the office a lot, and I'm going to
Interesting.
I might be looking at numbers, but I also might just be like scrolling on my phone.
Yeah.
Or I just don't want to be dealing with the hard, like being in the mix of everything, which like that's the main thing. So, so I want them to, and a lot of managers, even if they're not good at this, they'll know like, I'm not, a lot of times they'll say like, I'm not an office manager. You won't find me in the office. I'm out on the floor. I'm touching tables. I'm holding the team accountable. I'm coaching, like you want them to say that, but at the same time, I feel like most of them kind of know that, and some of them not, so that, and then like, if they have too much corporate background, that almost like if anyone applies that has worked at Chili's and Fridays and all that, like that's an immediate red flag, because I hate to say that, like if you have worked there, I'm just saying corporate gives you a playbook, and they hire like, it's almost like they're hiring a body. Like they want you to be responsible and professional and all that, but like they expect, I feel like they expect very little out of their managers, because they just hand you a playbook and this is how you handle this situation. This is how you handle that situation.
Yeah.
And it takes like the fun and excitement out of the position, and like the creativity. And that's like what gets people motivated and going. And like, you have the ability to come up with the specials next week, or organize some sort of event that's going to, that could draw people in,
Yeah.
So I feel like that, that's what I try to avoid. Like that's a big thing, just people that have too much corporate background, because we're not that way. We're not corporate. So we don't have some sort of massive playbook, and we have a handbook, but it's very just like, I want like good, solid managers that are very self-motivated and all that. So
yeah, that's interesting.
So that's really important. And I also try to understand like I want to know, do you understand the difference between front of house and back of house? And do you understand the weight of, the balance of holding people in the kitchen accountable, and like going too far and pissing them off, and now they walked out and now you have no kitchen. And if you don't have a kitchen background and they don't respect you, like you're not only creating problems for yourself, but you're creating problems for me, because I'm going to have to end up cooking,
Yeah. Yeah.
So not that I'm scared to do that. It's just sometimes people don't understand. We're not always dealing with like professionals. So it's important to understand who you're dealing with and how to talk to them, how to coach them and motivate them. And that doesn't mean don't hold them accountable, but like, asking questions that like help me understand, do you have the experience with these different types of like job classes, and do you know how to deal with them and coach them? Because at the end of the day, it's really about the culture, and like, do you promote a positive culture where people want to work for you?
Yeah.
So you have to be able to earn their respect. You have to be willing to lead by example, clean the restrooms, not only delegate and tell people to do that, but like it's a lot easier to delegate when they've seen you do that and they've seen you mopping and sweeping and, rubbing shoulders with them.
Yeah. Do you ever ask in an interview, like, has someone walked off the job for you before and what did you do about it?
Yeah, sometimes, I mean, a guy I hired a year ago, I mean, he just kind of offered that information up. Like, I used to be a toxic manager and there was a shift where like my whole staff walked out of me and we had a full restaurant and like, I just had to, put my tail between my legs and apologize the next day. And, I appreciate him telling me that, especially like when it wasn't prompted, but like to me, and ultimately we hired him and he's no longer with us for other reasons. I don't feel like he was a toxic manager. I just feel like he wasn't a good fit for us, but, I think I should have interpreted that as like, did you like when you discipline your kids, like, is it an actual heart change or are you just sad you got caught? You hear your mom tell you that all the time. So it's like, he apologized the next day and he learned from that, but like, what's he supposed to do? His staff walked out, like he's screwed.
Yeah, right. There's no other option.
So, that's always a red flag, even if you've learned from it, and you've grown from it, it's always like, well, are you really able to be humble and like teachable, or do you just struggle with pride to the extent of where you're going to create more problems for yourself?
If you asked that question and the interviewee said, I've never had anybody walk out on me on a shift, is that also a red flag? Because it's just
not necessarily. I would hope that they wouldn't dwell on that too much and they would just jump into like, I'm big on promoting and cultivating a really strong team atmosphere. I haven't had to deal with that because like the culture and the team is essential, and I'm going to focus on making sure that like it's healthy. And it's so. Have I had to hold people accountable, fire people? Have I had a few people mad at me for certain decisions? Of course, but that doesn't mean like the team suffered because of it. And a lot of times when I've made those decisions and I've had a few people mad at me, even if those individuals ended up quitting or I had to fire them, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to have the rest of the staff coming and thanking me for that. Like that's a perfect answer in my opinion.
Yeah, that's an A answer for sure.
So that's what I would look for. So no, it's not a red flag if you've never had that experience. I mean, that's kind of what you want. You don't want to be like dwelling on the negatives and like, you're the one in the middle of the drama. Like you should be like, no, let's nip that in the bud and let's focus on running a really good restaurant.
Yeah. Because like to flip it, so I've interviewed not a ton of project management, but some project managers for the construction side. Mm-hmm. And if they were to tell me like, oh, no one has ever not done what I asked, or no, like there's never been a job of mine where a trade didn't show up, I'd be like, that's bullcrap.
Yeah.
You're lying to me. So I would consider that a red flag of like, okay, you either haven't done this much and don't realize the reality of construction, or you're lying to me to cover something else way worse up. So yeah,
but there, what would be a good answer? Like, let's say he hasn't dealt with many issues. I mean, would it be like, yeah, we all know how it goes with dealing with subs and stuff. And, like, how would you want them to respond? What's a perfect answer, I guess?
Yeah. So the question I had that I would ask, like, where someone you've managed or like a subcontractor that's reporting to you, tell me about a time someone ignored or skipped something you asked them to do. Mm-hmm. And I think like what I want to hear from that person is very direct, clear communication that's backed up with evidence. Mm-hmm. I emailed their office. I left 3 voicemails. Like eventually we had to get a new sub that, the trim guy didn't come back. And so we had to get a new trim guy. Like that's fine. None of that is a red flag, but I want to see in that answer that you did you weren't afraid to call the original person. Like you weren't scared, like, oh, they didn't finish the trim job and I waited 3 days to call them back. Like you weren't scared to call them. You weren't scared to document it. And then you had to keep the job going. Like I understand that. So yeah, a bad answer. Like if I sense at all that there's some wishy-washiness in confrontation, it's like, okay, you're definitely not a project manager. Like there are places in construction that deal less with confrontation, but there's no job I can think of that's more that needs to be comfortable with confrontation more so than a construction project manager. So yeah, I really, and like the fringes of that question, I really want to dig in on, make sure they're ready and willing to be on their phone all the time. I've got a buddy who does this and he's like, it's babysitting adults. Like, he's like, I call before the trade shows up. I call them 2 weeks ahead of time. I call them 3 days ahead of time. I call them the morning of. Like every time we're having the same conversation. Hey, you're scheduled for this date. Like, make sure you come. Hey, you're scheduled for 3 days from now. Make sure you show up. Hey, you going to be on site today? Like, you're just doing that over and over again. But that's the kind of stuff I need and want to see out of a role like that. On that note of like knowing what you're interviewing for, I still love the question. I know it's like the cheesy played out, like, what's your 5-year goal? But I still love that question because it gives you some really good insight into where that person's head's at. Like, I think a great answer is, I interviewed a guy at Steiner Homes like this, and he was like, I have ran a construction company and realized it's hard. There's a ton of work and I have a ton of respect for what you guys do. Like, I just have found the bit of construction that I really love and I want to keep doing this. And almost like, I don't want to be promoted. This is the role I want to retire with. I think that is a huge plus. Like there are times when that can be a negative. Like if you're a more aggressive company and you're looking to grow really aggressively, like that may be a negative, but I don't know if I'm interviewing somebody.
If it's small business.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, they're probably not in that position.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so I don't know, to have a CAD person that's like, you know what? I just love designing houses. This is what I want to do with my career. And I don't need to if I were to interview, this is what I'd say. Like, I don't need to manage people. I've done that. I've hated it. Like, I just want to draw houses. If I was giving that interview, I'd be like, A+ answer. Like,
yeah,
let's hire that person.
I've had that so many times where someone's been like, I want to be director of operations and I want to grow. Is there growth potential? And they're probably told like, ask about, when you're being interviewed, ask about growth potential because it shows them that they're invested and all that. But like, I'm the same way. The person that just wants to be a really good manager and just manage that restaurant, I don't have to worry about like, are they happy because they said they wanted to grow, but there's really no opportunity right now. Like now you feel like you're kind of bending over backwards to make sure like they understand that in the restaurant industry, it's just like, it can be, if you're not self-motivated, it can be a very boring job and just like show up and expedite food and like, you're not thinking like, how do I grow this business and how do I do more marketing and it's my role to like set goals to incentivize them with bonuses and stuff, to keep them motivated. But, if you're worried about like, they wanted to be in a different position in 5 years and it's been 4.5 and they seem kind of bored and stuff, like. Yeah.
I think a lot of people, when they say the big goal of the 5-year plan, I think there's a lot of people out there that don't really mean it. Like you said, it was trained into them either from a Google or ChatGPT search or someone told them to do it. But like, I think more people would be way better off if they realized what they do and don't like and didn't have such aggressive goals to grow in their career. Like you've heard the thing, promoted to their own incompetence. Like, I think once you get to that incompetence level, you're not happy at your job anymore. So you might as well stay the level that you liked.
Yeah. Right.
And don't be afraid of that answer, I guess, is the big point.
Yeah. When people are when I ask them that first question about like, walk me through a normal day, like I really like, it's so, like I said, it's so easy to be lazy, and just come in and turn on the lights and fire up the grill. And so whenever they talk about like the details of like, first thing I like to do is walk throughout the restaurant on the inside and the outside, like anything that shows that I would think about as an owner, like they're thinking about just naturally, like I like to make sure everything's like the lights on the patio are not burnt out. There's no garbage out there. The floors got mopped well the night before, like the tables are set. There's no crumbs on the chairs. There's no crumbs on the tables from the previous night. Like I just want to make sure everything's in good standing before our next shift. Like that sort of thing shows me they have they can take themselves out of just like getting sucked into thinking like a server or just an hourly employee, know? So I love answers like that. Making sure the bathrooms are always, bathrooms reflect how the kitchen looks. So like if the bathroom's dirty, they're not taking pride in what they do. And what does that say about how the kitchen looks,
Yeah.
So just people that care about that kind of stuff is awesome.
100%.
What about any other questions on your end of like things that you've been told or been asked when you've been interviewing or vice versa when you've interviewed others?
Yeah. If I'm interviewing for a CAD person, someone, to draw plans, I want to make sure they're a really good tactician of the software. And not just like took a couple YouTube things. Like it's almost, to me, your portfolio doesn't matter as much as like if you can put together a great portfolio, whatever, like how fast are you at doing it? Because it's really fast paced business. When you get into it and you're actually trying to make money, you can't go slow. So a couple things I'll ask. I don't know the parallels to like other jobs and stuff like this, but like how do you use AutoCAD or whatever software I want to hear people say, oh, I've got my own quick commands that I set up. Like I want to hear them know a ton about the software in those questions, and not avoid the beginner things and the beginner ways to use that software. Like if you just pulled it up and started drawing the ways that you would do that, I don't want to hear any of that. I want to hear like the detail of how you've mastered the software to get really, really fast at it. I think too, like what tools or equipment do you need to do your job well? Like I want to hear some knowledge from them. Like, okay, I need a great PC, like have some forethought into what a good system looks like in order for you to perform at your best. Like the red flag is, I bought a $300 used on eBay and it's just been good enough for me, That was like, okay, no, stop.
Yeah.
Because like I like the get anything done kind of mentality. It doesn't matter if I have the best equipment or not, but also I know if they're operating a $300 machine, they're not going fast. It's impossible. It's impossible to go at a real speed if you're waiting on your laptop all the time. So I want to get that stuff out of the way.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't know the parallel to that to other fields, but I guess the big point is know the job you're interviewing for. If I'm giving the interview and looking for an employee, like it does help a lot to be an expert in it and know when they're BSing you and when they're not.
So do you mind if we do a new segment presented by Burnham Design Co.?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
This
presented by Burnham Design Co. Okay, go.
All right. Worst interview. I'll go first. Worst interview experience you've ever had, whether you've been the interviewee or the interviewer, and what you learned from that experience. All right. Like I said, I'll give you some time to think because we didn't talk about this. So
okay.
I'm going to go first. All right. So once I interviewed this guy for a restaurant down in Indianapolis, Burger House. We used to have down there, closed it during COVID. And he was from this area, and Northwest Indiana, and he wanted to eventually, start at that location. He was living in Indy and wanted to move up to Cherville and work at that store. So he was like very motivated. And we brought him in here to Burger House Valpo for the interview, and my dad asked him, so tell me a little bit about your family. He probably talked about each child for 20 minutes.
So this is like a multiple hour meeting.
So at some point we cut him off and we were like, dude, just a little synopsis. And so that's kind of how that interview went. Basically what I'm saying is like, he was extremely wordy, like individual. But that was a huge red flag. And the worst part about it is we hired him. Like this was a long time ago. And we were like, you know, he seems like he knows restaurants and what he's doing and somewhat professional and got experience and all that. Little weird, but you know, that's okay. Sometimes like the weird managers are the best managers, you know?
Yeah.
So, but what I've learned from that is if you have a very wordy manager, it's a risk because, you know, how much time are they going to waste, you know, BSing with their staff, talking about things that just like don't matter. Like I'm not saying you can't talk about stuff like lighthearted stuff. Like that's great. But like 9 times out of 10, they're going to be such an annoyance to the team where the team feels like I have to get to that table, you know, if you're that wordy.
Yeah. And
you just have no like social cues, like, oh, this person is backing away and they want to like go back out to do their job, you know?
Yeah.
Like if they just don't get it, like that's a huge risk, you know, because then I'm going to get people coming up to me like, I don't respect this person. I can't work for them. Like they're just, you know, like that's to me, like the wordiness and not being efficient with your time and just like how you're talking, you know?
Yeah.
That's a huge red flag. And that guy created a lot of issues for us. So even after he was gone. So, you know, that is something that like I really pay attention to. Like even if the interview went well, did it go long? Like did it go for, you know, even if I almost was like enjoying it, because you're interviewing this person. So like you're meeting this person for the first time. So you might be interested in what they're having to say.
Yeah.
You know, but like, did it kind of sneak away from us and go like 2 hours, 2.5 hours, you know, like it should go 45 minutes at the most and be done, you know?
Right.
So, so that's kind of what I learned from that is like, even if I enjoyed the interview and it went long, like pay attention to that because, you know, if they're a wordy individual and you didn't really catch it, you know, right off the bat, then that's going to probably create more problems for you. So
that's funny.
Yeah, that was a train wreck.
I think the weirdest interview I was a part of, I spent a summer in Colorado and interviewed for a trim carpenter. And the guy just picked me up in his pickup truck. And I don't really remember him asking me anything about trim carpentry. I didn't really know anything. My dad ran a home building company, but like, I didn't know how to do trim.
Yeah.
You know, like I do now, but like, I couldn't have then told you how to cut a baseboard and what was the best.
45 degrees.
There you go. I remember him saying like, oh, you're studying engineering. I guess you're good at math. that was like the only question I remember him asking me. So I'm like,
it's not much of a question.
No, it's not. So that worked out.
You got the job?
I got the job.
Well, was he happy with your performance?
I don't know. I worked for him for like 90 days. It kind of
sounds like working with grandpa, you know?
Oh, it was exactly like that. Yes. I felt like a little kid in his giant truck.
16 inches.
Yeah. He took me to get Mexican food, chili rellenos.
Yeah, relleno.
Yeah, they were good. First time I'd ever had those. So yeah, it did. It definitely felt like a day with Grandpa. He was a nice guy though. I broke one of his tools and didn't make me pay for it. So
wow,
there we go.
Grandpa would have made you pay for it. It's coming out of your check.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
So that's.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's a fun story.
Apart from answers to questions, I think one thing you should always do if you're interviewing for anything is bring questions about the business. Not the selfish questions, although those do need to be asked. Like what's the pay, what's vacation time, what are the benefits? You know, like that's fine asking it. Like you said, don't dwell on it though. But I think asking good, insightful questions about what the business is, what they do, how they operate, like come prepared to ask the owner or manager, what are your best profit centers? What are just like try and figure out as much about the business as you can. I don't know. I was always impressed by that when people did that to me. Like, what are your best selling plans? Why do you think those plans are good? Like, worst case scenario, you're going to learn something from the interview and not get the job. But
yeah, can I speak to that?
So you can't. I would love if you spoke to that.
Okay, I like that a lot too. I will say, like, I interviewed someone like a month ago, and they're no longer in the position. They were a great server. We wanted to promote them to like part-time manager, take on a little bit more leadership, and he kind of like came in with the posture, like just like a overly confident posture. But like my manager at Birdie's loved him, and I had a lot of other people that spoke really highly of him. But like this was kind of my first. He was new. This was my first time meeting him, and she wanted to put him in like a quasi-manager position. So like when I'm sitting down with him, he was very nice, seemed like a really good guy. And he still is, it's just, I don't think it was a good fit, but he had like this confident, like overly confident posture where he was kind of like leaned back. Like it was almost like he was giving the interview, like, so tell me, he kind of looked like that. And didn't really come in with like, just like a humble servant type like posture and attitude. And so when I got to the point where I was like, what kind of questions do you have for me? The questions were like, what's your 5-year goal? What's your plan? I'm like, dude, it's not your business. Like,
oh yeah, that's weird. Yeah.
I answered the question like, oh, I don't know. Like we're just trying to make good restaurants and I don't know.
Yeah.
Like what? Ask me questions about the job that you're being hired for.
Yeah.
Like you want to learn more so you have more clarity, and I get it. Like sometimes you're going to have to ask like, what's the vacation or what's the pay range or like, but if you're overly focused on that and not about like, what sort of, what do you expect out of me or what sort of software do you use for this? Like just asking questions about like what they have to be doing so they can do a better job. That's kind of what I want to see. And doesn't mean you can't ask questions about pay or benefits or anything. But, if you're asking me about like my plans and what I want to do and like, we're not here to talk about that. Like, I get it. Maybe you want to know what sort of company you're working for. Like, it's not like a terrible question. But like, at least don't just make it about that. Like, at least have some other questions about that are a little bit more focused on what your role is in the position.
Yeah,
or the company. Like, I don't know. Maybe that's a bad example. Because I do want them to understand who they're working for and make them feel comfortable.
Yeah,
I think it's just a balance of like maybe have 3 or 4 questions and don't make it all about like me and like, because at some point it almost seems like false flattery, like it's really impressive what you've been able to do here. And, it's just, I don't know. Like, I don't need to hear that.
Yeah. Don't need it. I do think like if somebody is like, hey, I ate at Burger House last weekend and I noticed the server asked me about pickle chips, is that a promotion you guys are currently running with the servers? I think questions like that are great. Like, show you're invested, show you care, show you want to learn about the role, about what the inner workings. Yeah. But like so what's your plan in life? I don't know. That does seem weird. I always like to ask, I like to open an interview with like, so why are you here? And just try and throw them off a little bit just to get a glimpse into their personality. What are they thinking about? And, like, why did they show up for this interview? I think you can get a lot out of that.
I agree. Like I said, though, sometimes it's hard to find, sometimes like the managers people that are like a little bit off make like really good managers,
Yeah.
So it's like, if I'm like, let's say you have like a mild form of like autism or Asperger's, like you can be like an A manager, like you can be awesome.
Yeah.
But you might answer some questions weird. So it's like, it's different for me because like the perfect interview is not always the best fit.
Interesting. Yeah.
Like if I have someone that's like just a little socially awkward at times, or, like not always, but like I don't write them off because people that are autistic are like, can be brilliant, and like can be really driven, and maybe they might struggle a little bit with like handling personnel issues. And I don't know, like everyone's got things that they struggle with, but like, for me to try and throw them off doesn't always work because like that just might not be a skill set of theirs. And it's not necessarily what I need,
Yeah.
So I don't know, just my perspective.
I like your perspective.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, buddy. Cuz
there's gotta be more. I don't think we have to like keep going really, but, I know I had more thoughts.
Yeah, I have here, like, again, this is on the corporate side, but tell me a time you screwed something up and how did you work to fix it? I want to see, you can kind of get a sense for the honesty in that moment. Like, are they going to really share a real screw up, or did they pick one that's like, doesn't really make them look bad? I think you can get a really good sense for that. And I think it's okay to be honest and share a real screw up because we're human. I don't think that's a disqualifier for the interview. And then you also get some like problem solving and ownership skills out of it. Like, I drew a plan where the foundation and the main floor didn't match. Like that's a real thing that really happened, and I really had to go to the customer and say, I'm sorry, like this is how we fixed it. Like, I think that's a way better answer than trying to pick the little thing that if I get the least bit of sense that you're trying to push that mistake onto anyone else that you worked with, like, but we had this weird system where it was really hard to track the foundation plan with the main floor plan, so we ended up fixing that and it never happened again. Like, I don't want to hear that it was somebody else's fault or you can't really take ownership for your mistakes. That's a massive red flag to me.
Yeah. I really like to know how they spend their free time. I think it's important to like for them to be active, and in this industry you get a lot of people that are like into video games, and that's fine, but like if there's someone that likes to be outside and moving and go for bike rides, and at the very least, or they have a hobby, I think that's important, because the lazy, the people that don't really like have anything going on or that just says you're not that motivated, you don't care about your appearance or your body, you're taking care of yourself,
Yeah.
So I think that's important. But you don't want to like be obsessed with their hobbies, like, because then they're like I am with golf, like, I probably golf a little bit more than the average person. So, if they like their hobby a little too much, then are they going to be in the restaurant enough, to be focused?
So is this a good answer or a bad answer? Yeah, I love mountain biking. I usually do like 20 races a year. Those races I'm gone from like Friday night to Sunday morning.
Yeah, you're not hired.
How would you rate that on a scale of 1 to 10?
Like I wouldn't. Yeah, I don't know, 1, 2.
Negative infinity.
Yeah. Or like I typically do 20 races a year, but now that if I come work for you, I understand like the restaurant industry is tough, so maybe I'll just do like 5 or whatever. That tells me you have the lack of like you kind of know you're getting hired, but you have the lack of experience because you've done all these races in the last
Oh yeah, like
10
where were you
years.
working that let you take
Like,
20
yeah,
weekends
right.
off? Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot.
There's, I mean, like you bring up that example. It's like that brought up like what I'm looking for and what I'm thinking about. Like there's so many things that we can't even get into because it almost takes like a mock interview.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? But there's so many things that I could come up with that like this is what I would be looking for. Or this.
yeah. We should interview someone on the pod.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Let's do it. I would be a bad interview for a manager job. I'd be like, don't hire me.
Yeah.
I don't want to manage anybody.
Just want to.
So that guy didn't seem super excited about the job. Other than that, he was great.
Yeah. The ultimate red flag. Like I just really need this job, man. I've had that before, and you're like, okay.
Is that like a really?
Not so much for. I haven't had that so much from like managers, but.
Oh
like,
yeah.
Yeah, like cooks and servers and stuff. You're like, don't say that.
Don't say that. Hey,
It's not hard to get a job as a cook, or like,
yeah.
maybe you won't be on the highest end of the pay scale starting out, but like we just need people that are ready to work, like
Yeah.
so cool. Any other thoughts?
I think like I know everyone knows this, but do the little stuff, be on time, look nice. That stuff, I couldn't ever imagine hiring someone that was late for an interview.
Mm-hmm.
Like the very first interview, unless you have like, oh, I hit a deer and you're texting me pictures of the, the deer you hit, or like,
Yeah.
Serious, like a verifiable, something that's documented that you could show me for the reason you were late.
Yeah.
It's really, really hard to get past that. Like there's almost no point. Like you said, there's people out there.
Mm-hmm.
And you can almost always find someone like you don't need to be showing up late to an interview.
Yeah. I mean, for me I think like really the most important thing, I don't, that might be strong, but like what makes my life easier is if I have I feel like there's two types of managers that like create drama or diffuse drama. And what I'm trying, I need managers that diffuse drama,
Yeah.
like there's a lot of other things that are important to the role, but like, I feel like that's kind of got to be the mindset,
Do you ask questions around that? Do you ask like, how dramatic would you say your last?
No, I don't know if I do. Like, I think maybe looking for a lot of these answers might help me give me a feel for how well they do at that. But yeah, I think it's hard to ask questions about that. Like I can, but like the answers are always going to be, yeah, of course I hate drama. I'm not a drama type person. Like what person's going to say like, yeah. So I would just look for answers and other questions to help me give it. But, unfortunately, a lot of times we've had to just fire people that we didn't really see that coming, and then, come to find out that they're creating a lot of drama.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's really important to me. Like it just makes my life a million times easier if you just like handle the situation.
Are those the kind of people that the other staff like thanks you when?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
It is.
I don't want to be the kind of person where the staff is thanked after I leave.
Yeah.
That sounds brutal.
Oh man. I've had so many where it's just like, they just don't get it. And then you fire them and they just continue to blow up your phone with excuses. I mean, it's just so many excuses and putting the blame on other people and lots of, crying and like, it's just like, it's a completely different person, than what you thought you interviewed. So, yeah.
Sweet, man. Well, we're at an hour here. So,
yeah, thanks.
Thanks. Like and subscribe. Tell your friends.
Yep.